Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Atpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva, Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Yata Sarvani Bhutani Pratibhanti Stitani Cha Yatraivo Pashamam Yanti Tasmai Satyatmane Namaha. So, who knows where we are in the text? Mark, do you know? Am I muted? Am I still online?
Verse
Can
50,
you guys hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can
Yep.
hear you. I can tell you in a second. I thought Mark was going to.
Verse 50
So-
on page 177.
Verse 50 on page 177. Will you help us out, please, Ganesh?
Puneet had his book already. So, you sure you want me to?
All right, go ahead. I don't care. Leader, he's delegating.
177.
That's what he said.
Which verse?
50.
Verse 50.
Abhyasena parispande pranayam shayamagate mana prashamamayati nirvanam avishyate. When the movement of the vital airs or bioenergies has come to its end by practice, the mind attains to calmness and nirvana, or liberation from matter and mind, and reunion with the Supreme Spirit is left behind.
Yes. Now remember, this is an abridgment. So I don't know what verses preceded it. But what we're talking about is Raja Yoga. We're talking about Ashtanga Yoga. We're talking about the 8 limbs. Yamas, niyamas, those moral precepts, asana, physical postures, which help to put the body in a healthy condition, then pranayama. Pranayama. Prana is not breath. Prana is the vital energy. But we gain control of the prana through the breath and through the conscious visualization and movement of energy. So this is the whole science of pranayama. if, I can't remember if we've talked about this, if you have an interest in this, it is always suggested that you study it with a bona fide teacher. I am not he. I am not a Raja Yogi. If you want to read a very good book by a great yoga master, I would recommend Light on Pranayama by BKS Iyengar. It's excellent. It's just excellent. And who here has studied some pranayama and might have a resource? Okay. So what he's talking about here, if you follow through all the steps, so after pranayama, pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal, what we would call in our tradition uparati, that's the word that Shankara uses. Then comes dharana, being able to bring the mind to a single point. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Then dhyana, meditation. It's at this point that Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga begin to merge. The meditation fundamentally is about quieting the mind. Reducing, the term he used here was spanda, the oscillations, to come into the nirvikalpa state. Always, when we teach nirvikalpa, we teach it with two definitions. This is incredibly important. The first definition, it is the mind state of no mind. How do we prepare for it? You can do it through this control of the vital energy, through the control of the breath. Fundamentally, though, if we do not let go of all the attachments, vasana will remain behind. And then when the mind stops, you don't get a bona fide nirvikalpa, you get what we call a Jada Samadhi. Jada means inert. You get the experience, I see nothing. But the individuality is still there. Why? Because the individuality is still there because vasana is still there. Shankara is very clear on this point. It is the annihilation of the vasanas here and now that's considered liberation by the wise. So the way it's approached by Shankara in Viveka Chudamani is this. Continue to meditate. You can do pranayama. It's very, very helpful for many people. Swamiji did not teach it. I did my pranayama practice before I ever met it. I let it go when I entered into Vedanta. But all we can really practice in many ways is savikalpa samadhi. Keep tuning up the mind. Keep this intense introversion. Renounce, renounce, renounce. When the last attachment, the last identification has been let go, the mind slips into nirvikalpa. It is absolutely self-validating. Have I had nirvikalpa yet, Jim? You asked that question, probably no. Or you may have had it and not recognized it. Technically speaking, anytime the mind is free from what we call vimarsha, deliberation, that's samadhi. But if it's a full and deep nirvikalpa, what's so clear is the complete unreality of the individual self. It's gone. And then when the mind returns from nirvikalpa, you watch the whole creation wave out of consciousness. So all these scriptures that talk about the entire phenomenal world is nothing but consciousness, it's based in an experience, not just philosophy. Now, don't worry about nirvikalpa. There's a trap. If you make nirvikalpa another object of desire, then your very yearning for it keeps it from happening. Focus your attention on what's your essential nature. Who am I? Let go of everything. Stay rooted in aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Just stay with that. Now, second way of approaching the nirvikalpa state. Nirvikalpa means that state where the distinction between knower, knowing, and known is gone. They're merged into one, or it's no longer there. So if we look at the whole process of how do I know I am, knowledge of the world always takes place with what we call the triputi, the triple factor. I, Jim, through seeing, know the candle. I, Jim, through hearing, know the sound of the traffic, etc. I, through manas, know feelings. I, through buddhi, know thoughts. How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, smell, emote, or think yourself. Yet you know you are. You don't know yourself as an object, but you know you are. Who knows it? I do. What is your means of knowledge? What's the instrument? Me. What is that which is known? Me. So here, nirvikalpa is not the definition of a state, but it's another definition for the self. Meaning myself is always nirvikalpa. So in Shankara's great hymn, Nirvana Shatakam, one of the verses starts, aham nirvikalpo. It doesn't say I am in nirvikalpa. He says, I am nirvikalpa. Now listen carefully. If the mind itself is an illusion and the perception of the world is illusory, why would I be all concerned about stupid mind states? Aham nirvikalpa. I am without any movement. Both definitions are valid. All depends on how you want to approach it. There's a great discussion among the Advaitins. Is Nirvikalpa Samadhi necessary? Some very well-known Vedanta gurus say no, it's a myth. It's a stupid mind state. Pay no attention to it. What you need is knowledge for yourself. But Shankara teaches it in Viveka Chudamani. Swamiji taught. For most of us, the mind just won't let go of its subtle identification with being a person without it. Now, the state beyond Nirvikalpa as a mind state is what we call Sahaja Samadhi. Meaning you're not lost in Nirvikalpa for hours and hours and hours. In our story that we've been talking about, what was the name of the sage? The Muni Putra was the son. What was the father's name? Anybody remember? Anyway, he was in Nirvikalpa for 12 years. You know, some people, they're fond of samadhi. Others. So here, the import here is for those who are practicing Raja Yoga and who have really also gone through the process of Vairagya, intense renunciation. If you actually study Yoga Sutra, what Patanjali says that we should do is Abhyasa Vairagya cha. Practice and intense renunciation. What is the definition of Vairagya, which is essential? That desire, you don't achieve it overnight. To give up all attachments to enjoyments gained through the sense objects. Here, actually, we can say experiences. And that desire to give up all identifications with any form of self, from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, meaning I'm important. That is what's termed by Shankara as Vairagya. So our attachments to experiences, attachments to identification as a form of self, both have to go. And Nirvikalpa will not happen until they do. Why? A vasana has two powers. Anybody here not remember what a vasana is? Yes, everybody knows. Don't be, shy. If you don't know, I'll define it. Okay, Vasana has two powers, Varana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Varana Shakti means veiling power, meaning non-apprehension of my essential nature. How do I know my mind is covered by Vasana? Because I think I'm a person. That's simple. That means I've got some scrubbing to do. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Sri Rama Vacha, Sri Rama said, Evam chitta shama prokta samyajnanam katham prabho. Lord, the tranquility of the mind has thus been told by you. How is right knowledge obtained?
So remember, he said that liberation can be done through yoga and through jnana. So now he's going to talk about how right knowledge can serve to free us. Let's see what the answer is.
Vasishtha Uvacha, Vasishtha said, Yata bhutartha darshitvam samyajnanam bhavet yataha ima ghatapatakara padartha shatapankaya atmaiva nanya dastiti nishchaya samyagishanam. Perceiving objects truly would be right knowledge, for which reason the conviction. Quote, these hundreds of groups of objects in the form of vessels, cloths, etc. are only the self, and there is nothing else, end quote, is right perception.
Yes. So what we're talking about is this paradox. We have these two scriptural statements. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real, the phenomenal world is illusion. And then we have the scriptural statement, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahman. Make up your mind. Is it illusion or is it Brahman? Yes. What's illusory is that I think the names and forms are separate from me, are concrete, substantial, and real. Best way to understand this is to go to the dream state. So if you were to close your eyes and visualize an elephant, open your eyes and you know the elephant of your fancy is just imagination. That's all it is. But if you dream about an elephant, it's similar and different. First comes falling asleep, which is ignorance of myself as the waker, Avarana Shakti. Then when the mind projects the elephant, Viksheva Shakti, to the dreamer, I think the elephant is real. I do not ascertain that the elephant is unreal until I wake up. It's negated. Oh, that was so weird. I was in bed with an elephant. So, what right knowledge is to see this world as just nama rupa, it's just name and form, superimposed on consciousness. Now, Shrunahu, listen very carefully. Why do I think the waking state world is so real? Because of my firm sankalpa. It's because I believe it, and I have believed it for lifetimes. I'm convinced it's real, and it's joy-giving and misery-producing. As soon as I start to take up the thought, well, maybe it's not so real, Maybe the scriptures are right. Maybe it's like a dream. That concretization starts to loosen. The more I study, the more I'm open to this idea. And the more I meditate, the thinner the world becomes. We get a term called tanu manasaha, which means thinness of mind. I think we might get the English word tenuous from that. I don't know. But because the mind is the world and the world is the mind, if you thin the mind by reducing the frequency and the volume of thought, the world starts to thin out. The only word I can come up with is it becomes almost transparent. Like you could stick your hand through it. But we start by being open to the idea, right knowledge, gained through the scripture, gained from the teacher. Brahma satyam jagan mithya sarvam kalvidam brahma. What it's not saying is the jagat, the creation, is real and separate from me and inherently solid and concrete. It's made of matter, which is solid and is inherently joy-giving and misery-producing. That's wrong knowledge. And because it appears concrete only because I believe in it, if I start to break down the belief, I'm open to a different way of seeing, then that sankalpa starts to loosen its grip. How did that sankalpa get there in the first place? Maya. That's how the Lord set it all up. So ignorance is beginningless. It's always been this way, but it has an end. You can get out right now. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Ch18 anyat chittam Vahaivedyam vrijambhate Sarvam ekam param brahma Ko moksha kasya bandhata. The perceived world of objects is not different, nor is the mind. Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit, alone pervades here. Everything is one Supreme Spirit or Brahman. What is liberation? To whom is the state of bondage?
So here, what he's talking about is these two ideas that we work on, three ideas. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? So the first idea he's working on, this world is nothing but the play of consciousness. But also this experience of being an individual. That also is an illusion. Now, if you want to get an incredibly beautiful and in-depth analysis of this, I suggest returning to Shankara's Vivekachudamani, to the section on the five koshas, and review Shankara's teaching on the Vijnana Maya kosha. But I'll go through it in brief. So the koshas are like nesting dolls, like those Russian dolls. There's one, and then there's inside another, and inside that there's another, etc. So the Vijnanamaya kosha, or the intellectual sheath, is comprised of the organs of perception at their subtlest level: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. Buddhi, intellect, and karta, the sense of doership, also sometimes called ahankara or ahankritti. This is not evil or bad. Without it, couldn't function in the world. For example, you got out of bed this morning. You went to work. You had lunch or dinner. You came to class or logged on. In the Vijnanamaya kosha is this function that coordinates all this and makes it happen like it's happening to the same person, basically to the body. So it's in the Vijnanamaya kosha where you attribute to the self the qualities of the not self. Some people have a broken karta, a broken ahankritti. I have a fellow I work with who has a terrible time with addiction to crystal meth. And after he's been on a run for several weeks, all of a sudden, what actually happens is you don't sleep, so your mind starts to dream while you're wide awake. He is convinced like people will be chasing him on motorcycles, and they're not there. That people are going to be coming through the walls, and they're not there. He'll be hearing a voice telling him what to do. Schizophrenics do the same thing. Multiple personalities have that. So this function in the intellect can get damaged. Can get damaged. So what does the yogi want to do? Just like you are not your body, just like you are not the prana, just like you are not your feelings, you are not any of the elements in the Vijnanamaya kosha. So Shankara is very clear. You see the elements. You see it rise and fall. You see it have qualities and characteristics. It is not the pure self. I am not the doer, the karta. It's a function in the Vijnanamaya kosha. Basically, just the force of the past and what mood I'm in. So it's not about killing the ego. It's about seeing its fundamental unreality. Now, for the man of wisdom or the woman of wisdom, when they look inside, they're very clear. There's no person there. Actually, for even the person in ignorance, if the mind is really quiet and you introvert your attention, there's nothing in there. But when I'm extroverted, dealing in the world, engaged in what the scriptures call vyavahara. That's a Hindi word, isn't it too?
Mhm.
What's it mean in Hindi?
It's
Business?
business. Yeah.
Yeah, means transactions in Sanskrit. I'm doing business in the world. The yogis, Karta is doing that. But she knows Aham Brahmasmi. I am ever the witness, the consciousness that illumines that dream-like dance going on. This is right knowledge. So we have knowledge of who I am, knowledge of this world, and how has it come about? Sankalpa. And it's a group effort. There's those sankalpas that are done by the infinite that make galaxies spin and stuff like that. But at the human level, each one of us, largely unconsciously, are participating in creating this melange of the human condition through our own sankalpas. A total mind, the human mind. That's how it's come about. Next verse. Before we do that, that was pretty technical teaching. Did everybody get it? Do you have any questions about it? All right, sorry, going on.
Samyak alokite rupe kashtha pashana vasasam managapi na bhedosti quasi sankalpa nonmukha. When the nature of objects like wood, stone, and cloth is well perceived or considered, there is not even a little difference. Where you are intent on imagination.
Was that a question?
Yeah.
Again?
Question.
So the idea here is you want to cultivate this samadrishta. So everything is the same, pretty to look at. Wood, cloth, stone, gold, everything. It's all just name and form, namarupa, with no inherent joy-giving properties. I decide what it is that I think is pleasurable, and it varies from person to person. And when I get what I want for a moment, I get a kiss of the bliss of my essential nature. It's what we call a mediated experience of the self. It's a medium of some external situation. The world isn't good, it isn't scary, it isn't bad. It's shunyata. It's empty. Watch the movie go by. Your hand in front of you. You are kutusta. You are still. You never move. Don't believe me? Go there and find out. Any questions? Next verse.
Adav ante na sanshantam swarupam avinashiyat vastu namatma shchaiva vastu namatmana shchaivam Tanmayo bhava Raghava. Be full of that natural state of oneself in which, be full of that natural state of oneself which is indestructible, tranquil at the beginning and the end, and also is verily the essence or reality of the self.
Yeah. So here he's talking about be full, let the mind revel in the self. Now, here is a doubt that I had that really plagued me. If the self is eternal, if the self is changeless, and if the self is Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, and bliss, it means that I'm experiencing it all the time. Okay, I get that I exist. I always experience that. I get that I'm also always shine as awareness. But I'm not blissful every day. What's this bliss stuff about? You understand the doubt? So obviously, what I think Ananda means isn't what it is. Every single one of you is experiencing Ananda right now. Anybody here have a bad day? Bad week, bad day during the week? Anybody? Oh, you're all blissful. In the midst of your misery, you're experiencing Ananda. So, what is Ananda? Ananda, the way I like to start is no sorrow reaches there. Physical pain gets to my body, emotional upset gets to my mind, doubt, confusion gets to my intellect, but nothing gets to me. And even in a miserable state, it still doesn't touch myself. Then why do they use the word Ananda, which is so confusing? And that is when we clearly understand where happiness is. Happiness is what your mind wants. The human mind is a happiness seeker, pain avoider mechanism. In its delusion, the mind thinks I can find happiness in people, places, things, and conditions. You can get a little bit of it there, but it's not even really in the object. I just use the object to induce a mind state of the mind coming home to the self. We use the term yoga. Who can tell me what yoga means? You're also quiet.
Union.
Yes. So is it the self?
Oh, you
that
said it
gets-
meant practice.
Yoga, does yoga mean union? It actually means union, comes from the root yuj, to join.
Okay.
Does the self get yoked or joined to Brahman? Is that what it's about? No. That would be like me saying, okay, you're going to do this practice, and then your human body will be joined with a human body. That doesn't make any sense. So what gets yoked to what? It's the mind that gets yoked to the self. Many of you have seen that very, very famous image, a painting of Hanuman embracing Lord Ram. I just love it. He's got his arms around him, and Hanuman is so happy and blissful. Ram is just sitting there, standing there, and in many of them, he has a very neutral expression. Hanuman is the mind. When is the mind satisfied? When it's embracing all the self. So the yogi learns this trick of being able to drop all the struggling, enter into the self. Now there's no end to how deep self-revelry is. That too is endless and infinite. It just gets better and better. This is the mark of a woman or a man. Not only are they a full knower of the Supreme, but have they retired into the Supreme. Ganesh and I were talking before class about various practices and Shakti and stuff like that. And, you know, I never studied any of that kind of stuff. All I did was in Swamiji's presence, was surrender into him. And he would show me the awakened state of mind. He would show me how to taste the bliss of my own self-nature. My job was to learn to do it for myself, not be dependent on him. This is the difference between what we call paroksha jnana, indirect experience. I've studied all the scriptures. I have a full understanding of it. I believe it. Aparoksha jnana, direct experience. Any thoughts on this? Sounds great, Jim. How do I get there? Give up the world. That's the price tag. Does that mean leave the world? No. It means let a piece of wood, a piece of cloth, gold, a leaf, all be the same through right now. Next verse.
That was the last verse of the chapter. The concluding verse.
Okay.
Iti Shri Vasishtha Sangrahe Manonasha Prakaro Nama Saptadashaha Sargaha. Thus ends the 17th chapter titled The Manner of Destruction of the Mind in the abridgment of Yogavasishtha.
So let me review something. We have these two terms, Manolaya and Manonasha. And again, the Raja Yogis, they have a slightly different understanding of Laya. They will see that as a goal. In the Vedanta tradition, Manolaya means the mind getting very peaceful but moving toward unconsciousness. So in your meditation, it all gets very kind of thick and your mind drifts. And the best way to know you're going towards lie is your body posture will collapse. Maybe I'll smoke a joint. Put on some new age music and lie down. Oh, yeah. That's lie. It's better than being anxious. It's better than being stressful, but it does nothing to free us. Manonasha literally means the destruction of the mind. It means when I end the mind. Does that mean the cessation of all thought? If we're going for Nirvikalpa Samadhi, yes. But it's not just the thoughtless mind. We have to remove the vasana. Remove jiva bhavana, the belief that I'm a person. Remove the idea that the phenomenal world is separate from me and real. Let go of struggle. Kartavya. All right. Subtle stuff. Any questions?
Jim, I have a question. Uday here.
Please.
So is this something you would recommend during meditation once in a while? If, let's say there is some kind of a vasana which has been bothering you, but let's say that when you sit for meditation, it's nowhere on the scene. Is it a useful practice to bring it to mind to investigate it?
No.
Okay.
Seek a quiet mind. If it arises, then we discriminate. But don't go. For example, if you vomit up stuff into the toilet because you've had an upset stomach, do you go picking through the detritus in the toilet?
No.
No. If your mind's quiet, give thanks and shut up. It's a moment of grace. It's a moment of grace. But really, where you're going to find the vasana is not so much in your meditation seat, Uday. It's going to be out there in the world. It's a spiritual axiom that if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, that's the indication of where my vasana is. And that's where the vairagya needs to be done. Did that make sense?
Yes, Jim. Yeah, that's useful.
No, if your mind's quiet, leave it. Or other trivial thoughts may become, you work with that. You work with what he is. You don't need to go digging for it. Believe me, life will deliver it to you on a silver platter if you have asana.
That it does.
And if we don't do the vairagya and do the renunciation, life will go, oh, Jim, you missed it. Well, let's bring it around again. Oh, you missed it again. Well, let's bring a similar circumstance. We can do this dance for the rest of eternity until you let go. Oh, I get it. Let go of it. Duh. But it's amazing how we hang on to our misery. And it's so simple. All you have to do as look at a circumstance this past week that upset you. Tell me this is the first time you felt this. And taking a sledgehammer to life doesn't fix it. Keeps coming back. Why? Because I'm the one who's creating the circumstance through my attachment, through my identification. Now, Uday, one of the things we have to watch for is what I call phony renunciation or sour grapes renunciation. So this is when a circumstance that we engage in causes us to suffer, and we decide, all right, I'm not going to do that anymore. So where I had to deal with this in my own life is when I was beginning to sing and wanted to be a professional singer, I used to have terrible stage fright. And I can remember saying, okay, this is just too painful. I'm going to have to give it up. That's phony renunciation. Real renunciation is much harder. The lesson was, Jim, get up on the stage and get over your cheap self. Put your attention on the music. Let go of your opinion of what other people think of you. Can you
Right.
catch the subtlety of that?
Yep.
So the yogi, rather than avoiding uncomfortable situations, frequently will lean into them. Oh, this is interesting material. Stay present to this. Let go. All right, next chapter.
Hey, Jim, I have a question.
Please.
There were the two terms you were reviewing. What was the first one?
Manolaya.
Yeah.
Laya means dissolving or dissolution. Manonasha, which means destruction of the mind, which sounds pretty terrible, but it's not a frontal lobotomy. It means letting go of, I think I'm a person, the world of name and form is real, joy-giving and misery-producing, and kartavya, struggle, obligatory action is the literal meaning. I've got to go from point A to point B in order to be happy. Those are the core of the mind. Those are the things to destroy.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, then the first one is like your mind's getting calm, but it's thick. You were describing it that way earlier.
Well, it's when you head towards unconsciousness.
Yeah, so you were describing that, and I was like, oh man, I'm so glad that there's a term for that, because I feel like that happens to me
Yeah,
pretty frequently
yeah,
in meditation. And then it's usually the precursor to nodding off.
yes, that's called lying.
Right. So I guess I'm wondering, do you have like any practical advice on how to avoid that when you're meditating?
Yes. First of all, you are such an ordinary yogi that they wrote about this 1,000 years ago.
Sure.
Okay, so you're not unique and you're not bad and you're not a failure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're right on track. You're so much a textbook case. They wrote about it 1,000 years ago. So things that you can do. Try meditating with your eyes open. You can meditate with your eyes open and just fix your gaze lightly, like on a spot on the rug. There are some Zen traditions. I always get them confused, whether it's Rinzai or Soto, where they face the wall with their eyes open. Anyway, another one is if you're doing japa. Do you use japa? Okay. then I wouldn't worry about that. But one of the values of japa is you can say the mantra as louder in your mind, which will keep you awake. But do your best to stay conscious. Do your best to stay conscious. Anybody else have any tips for not falling asleep in meditation?
Jim, not a tip, but I feel that if one is repeatedly feeling sleepy, that means one needs to fix some more basic things first, like not getting enough sleep, being too stressed.
They said in the oh,
That's a possibility, but it's also a technique that ego uses to avoid. I mean, this is true life story. I was at a camp. There we were sitting cross-legged in front of Swamiji for the morning class. Everybody's bushy-tailed and bright-eyed. He started to, what I call, work the knowledge, turn people's attention back on themselves. The woman in front of me literally toppled over asleep. Because the ego doesn't want to hear this stuff. Doesn't want to face all that stuff. Did you have a comment, Justin?
they say at the Buddhist temple I went to in San Francisco for a while, to not ever close your eyes completely, but just shut them and keep them just a little bit open at the bottom. So it blocks out a lot of light and distractions, but it doesn't allow you to fall asleep, and focus on your posture too.
Yeah.
Try and keep your mind, like I said, I don't fall asleep easily, so that's not my issue. But that's what they were saying at the temple.
That's it.
Yeah.
Those are good techniques. But understand, Alan, that this is not unusual. Those of us who've been through Tripura Rahasya, when Hemachuda starts his practice, he falls asleep. The reason the author put it in the book is because it's a pretty common stage we go through. I look at it this way. These are the kind of summary of the mind states that the mind will go through in meditation. First is excitement. Oh, look, I'm starting to be a meditator. This is cool. I wonder if I need to get a different colored zafu, or I need to get some yoga pants to meditate in. And I wonder if I should tell Sue that I'm meditating now. Anybody have that one? Then the next one is what I call, housekeeping mind, mechanical mind. Did I remember to turn the stove off? What about the dog? Do I have to do something for the dog? And then, I had that upsetting conversation with my spouse. I've got to clean it up. And then, do clocks always run forward? Do they ever run backward? I mean, stupid things. Just, I remember when I was a kid. That's, just this kind of stuff coming up and dumping. Just dumping. Then frequently, next will come falling asleep. Also, you may go through a stage where you have a lot of very cool phenomena. You see light, energies pulsing through your body. Oh, my third eye is buzzing. Ooh, I'm getting someplace. Back go. Then lust will arise. Irresistible urges to pleasure yourself. Then frequently, a deep, nameless fear will arise. It takes some interesting forms. Sometimes it'll feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna fall. Oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna die. It's some of the last vestiges of ego. And when those are finally done, there's just something very peaceful, effortless, and still. Now, those are just some of the things that go on in meditation. Anybody else have things they want to add? It's not a time to be receiving messages. I'm going to do some channeling and meditation today. Babaji, send me messages of what to do about so and so. Oh, another good one. You are meant to be a great teacher. You are a little bit better than everybody else. You are unique and spiritual. Ego is very pernicious in its strategies. Any other thoughts or questions? Next chapter.
Ashtadashaha Sargaha, chapter 18.
It's 8:55.
I'm sorry.
What did you say, Justin?
No, I said it's 8:55. Usually one I would think it'd be a good place to stop if you're stopping at 9, but I don't know. My apologies. Whatever you like. I'll listen the whole time. Doesn't matter.
All right. Going on, please.
Vitahavyopakyanam, the story of Vitahavya. Section 1. Prana Spanda Nirodha, the control of the movement of prana, or the vital air. Vasishtha Uvacha, Vasishtha said, Athe mam aparam rama shrinu drishtim padapradam vitahavyo muni kaschet udvigno hi kriyakramat nirvikalpa samadhartha satyajya sakala kriyaha upavishya sane shuddhe sanjahar mana shanaihi. Rama, hear now this matchless knowledge which gives the supreme position. A certain sage called Vitahavya, disgusted with the performance of religious rites, having renounced all the rituals for the sake of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or absorption in the absolute consciousness, slowly withdrew or restrained his mind, having sat down in a pure place.
So here the implication is not that religious ritual and devotional practices are bad. Here he says he becomes disgusted with it. I'm not sure that's pretty harsh language. But we have to understand that this stuff implies a sequence. So again, going back to Tripura Rahasyam, which many of us just finished, this is the karma kanda, the knowledge portion, and it is it's the jnana kanda. It's preceded by the karma kanda, meaning a ritual portion. They say it's lost. My suspicion, if it's not identical with, it's very similar to the Sri Vidya tradition. But the point is, we do these ritual practices to purify the head and the heart so that the higher knowledge can come easier. Frequently, when you go to the guru, they will not give you the highest knowledge right away. They'll give you more basic practices to do. because we're not ready for it yet. We're not ready for it yet. We need those purifications. Those of us familiar with the Christian mystical tradition, there's a story in the Gospels about Mary and Martha. Jesus comes to their house, and he's a great guru. He sits down, and Mary's at his feet, just lost in samadhi. And Martha's in the kitchen, and she's fixing food for everybody. And I always imagine her, she comes out and she's got flour in her hair because she's been making matzah, and she says, Jesus, tell Mary to come into the kitchen and help preparing the food. And Jesus says, Martha, Martha, worry over what you don't need to be worried about. Mary has the better part. So this is traditionally explained that Martha means the active life, the ritualistic life, the devotional life, the karma yoga life. We do that first. Then we take up Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Many of us yogis are a bit on the arrogant side. And we go dashing into the highest knowledge before our minds are properly prepared. And then we get frustrated because we don't get the results. All right, now it's 9 o'clock and we'll stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.